Hi guys, Simon Bean, the Maverick veteran, here for the first time in, I don't know, 6-7 weeks, somewhere around there. And I thought my friends, at least on Facebook, need to know why I've sort of disappeared off the scene. I've only published this to friends. If you want to share it to beyond that, then there probably is a way, even if you just go to my YouTube channel, which is Maverick Veteran, and share from there. It's up to you, really. Why have I disappeared over the last few weeks? Well, the only way I can really explain is to tell you a story, a personal story that goes all the way back to 2004. Now, in 2004, I was deployed out to Iraq as the Force Master Driver, and I was located at headquarters, United Kingdom National Support Element. And as the Force Master Driver, it was my responsibility for all things transport and drivers. So I had somewhere in the region of 14,000 vehicles and 11,000 other equipments to sort of look after, manage, close liaison with the motor transport officers, etc. And I looked after all of Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, plus a small element that was based down in the Oman. So my area of responsibility, my AOR, was actually quite large, and it meant that I was out and about on the road every day somewhere. Now, because my armed and alone qualifications, I was able to move around the Middle East in 2 vehicle packets, or if I had to go great distance, and depending on the nature of security in certain locations, I would have to fly on Hercules C-130 or Chinook helicopter, CH-47. On one particular date towards the end of 2004, I had to go up to the BSU, which was the Baghdad Support Unit. It was part of HQ UK NSC, but obviously based in the green zone of Baghdad. Whilst I was there, somebody fired an RPG rocket into the BSU, and it hit the ground about 10 meters in front of me. Thankfully, it didn't go off immediately. It skimmed across the ground and made contact with the MT platoon office, and then exploded. And with it being sort of quite a low on the ground type explosion, the explosion went more out as opposed to up, and it fragged my legs, knocked me to the ground, and basically just knocked the wind out of me. Nothing too much to worry about. Few stone fragments, couple of metal fragments stuck in my shins. The incident was very quickly dealt with by the platoon that was there, present at the time, and as I was sitting near the front gate of the BSU, 2 Humvee vehicles, American, turned up and out jumped 8 US Marines. 2 of the US Marines rapidly approached me. As you can imagine, they're in body armour, tactical vests, carrying M4s plus sidearm. One of the guys I immediately recognised as Gary. Gary was an interpreter out in the Middle East, and I had dealings with him before when I was operating in and around Baghdad, Al-Amara, places like that. He very quickly said, "Are you all right, sir?" And I said, yeah, nothing to worry about. And he said, "She'll take care of you." And this other Marine showed up and to my surprisement, was a female. Now, 5'6", wearing all the gear, carrying the weapons, and a face to die for, to be perfectly honest with you. And as she approached, she said, "How are you doing? Are you all right?" And straight away I picked up on the fact that she had an English accent with a slight hint of Southwest US mixed into it. Well, she picked the bits of fragment out my legs, all bar one, which remains in my right shin to these days, and we got talking, and it turned out that she was a genuine Romany gypsy girl, had been shipped off to the States as a teenager because there were some issues going on back at home that they didn't want her to be involved in. She was brought up in the States by family, and eventually she enlisted into the US Marines as a medic. Now, she was operating there as part of a 12-man team, and I didn't know what that 12-man team did. They didn't wear any sort of rank, they didn't wear any sort of forms of insignia as such. But anyway, she patched me up, and after our short conversation, 3/4 of an hour or so, they all headed off. They mounted up, headed off, and I went back into the MT and had a coffee, as I remember, and just carried on with the logistics support inspection that I was doing prior to this RPG, making contact with the building. Well, anyway, I then saw this young lady, Rosie, on several more occasions during my visits around the various green zones. Always along with Gary, always along with up to, 8 or 9 others. So, and if time permitted, we talked. We chatted, had a little bit of a laugh and a giggle, and eventually we exchanged email addresses, because we were all encouraged at that time on both sides of the pond to have Yahoo welfare email accounts. So I would message her, she would message me just to keep tabs. Not too often, because she was often out and about and couldn't get access. I was out and about all the time, couldn't get access. Anyway, come April of 05, my 7.5 months in the Middle East had come to an end, and I headed back off to Northern Ireland, where I was living at the time. And eventually, by the sort of end of mid to end, I suppose, of 2006, we lost contact. And I just thought, oh well, she's got fed up, and I'd probably got a little bit fed up. But I think we only really, truthfully, got fed up because we talked things over. I was in a marriage that was stale and going nowhere at the time. She was also in a marriage that was the same. And we sort of jokingly said, wouldn't it be great if we lived in the same country, we could sort of maintain contact, see each other on a regular basis. And she turned around and said, yeah, we could even get married. Now, I laughed that off at the time, as you do, and made excuses like, well, it's just never going to happen. So that was that. Then suddenly, out the blue, towards the end of last year, 2018, I got a Facebook message saying, "Hi, how you doing? Do you remember me? My name's Rosie." Well, there you are. It's Rosie from Iraq. Now, bearing in mind when we first met, there was no form of social media as such, not as we know it today. And she had been watching a live video, and it was a live video that I had done, and it was obviously picked up there in the States, because all my live videos tend to go out public worldwide, and she suddenly remembered that she knew me. And she explained to me over a period of several messages that she didn't just disappear off because she lost interest. She'd actually disappeared off because, and this is where the story becomes a little bit difficult, to be honest, because this is a story of love, wartime romance, if that's what you want to call it, loss, abduction, torture, anger, tragedy, and thoughts of revenge, really. She let me know that about sort of mid-2006, her and her team were out on a mission, and while she was tending to somebody on the ground, she was abducted by Iraqi insurgents, and she was held captive in a building, and it only took about 20 to 30 minutes, she reckons, before the rest of the team managed to track her down. But in that 20 to 30 minutes, she really suffered. She was beaten. They attempted to behead her. She had 9 stab wounds. One side of her face was completely caved in, and before they actually managed to eliminate the insurgent threat and get her to a proper field hospital, she'd lost a considerable amount of blood and had in effect died and been brought back to life by other members of the team no less than 5 times. And by the time she, if you like, made contact with me, she'd had 20 operations, which included a steel plate in one side of her face, her jaw being wired back on, several other operations, all life-saving type operations, and she was still undergoing operations, but had made a vow that because her marriage had now broken down as a result of the attack, she would move back home to the UK. And then in May of this year, she contacted me to say, I'm back in the UK, blah, 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 and I immediately wanted to go and see her, which I did. Now, when I went to see her, obviously, we both aged. She had lots and lots of mental and physical scars. She commented on the fact that I had some mental scars. But I hasten to add that, you know, my scarring was nowhere near to the extent that Rosie's scarring was. So we both changed a lot, we both grown up a lot. But I still realised that there was something between me and her that was something that I had never ever really experienced before, like that. And over a period of time we talked, and we said that we may perhaps move in together and eventually go through with getting married, perhaps next year, something like that. She had a series of operations still to go, which she was going to have here in the UK. She still had some dental work to do, which she was going to do here in the UK. So everything was looking good for me and Rosie. Well, it came to the 16th of July this year, only a couple of months sort of after, and I had to head off and do a bit of work, plus I was getting ready to go to Wales for the Swansea weekend. And it was just prior to that Swansea weekend that I received a phone call from Rosie's cousin to say that Rosie had died. That she'd somebody had gone in to check on her, and she had died in her sleep. And the post-mortem eventually came back saying that she'd probably had a fit in her sleep, which she didn't wake up from, because she suffered a lot of brain injury, and she had to carry cards, and one of those tags that said that she's got a serious brain injury, and if she's found having a fit or found unconscious, you know, these were the numbers to contact, etc. So that gutted me, and it completely closed me down from everything, which is why basically I've just cut myself off from everything. Thanks have to go to, though, Julie Gillespie, Norman McGuigan, Cheryl Watson, Carlton Davies, Tanya over in Jersey, Lynn Angel, Susan Byatt, to name but a few, who have been contacted me by phone and also through Messenger just to make sure that I'm okay. And I can't thank you enough for that, to be perfectly honest, because that's really kept me going. And I found the whole thing so difficult that I ended up phoning my shrink and said, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling so anxious? And why am I so upset because somebody's passed away? Because lots of us have been surrounded by a lot of death, and you just sort of pick yourself up, brush yourself off, grieve a little bit for a couple of days, and it goes away. But this just wouldn't go away, and it's still raw now, and it's almost 2 months later. And I wondered if it was linked into PTSD. Now, I did undergo 2 years treatment, as you know, for the PTSD with my shrink, and my shrink turned around and said it's indirectly related to PTSD, in that it's not PTSD. She turned around and said the treatment that you had for PTSD has unblocked your brain, if you like, and your brain now recognises death for what it is, and is allowing you to go through the grieving process as you should. So she made it sound as though it wasn't such a bad thing, whereas for me, and she did understand, it absolutely devastated me, because the last time I cried over somebody or something dying was when my guinea pig died, and I was only 14, 15, you know, and I just couldn't understand it at all. So I chose not to go to the funeral because I knew I wouldn't be able to cope with the funeral. So I had an idea that I would just disappear off. So I went and disappeared off to Turkey for a couple of weeks, and really just gathered all my thoughts and tried to get this all into perspective. So it's, as I see it, just summarise all my thoughts, really, is opportunities missed. Opportunities missed, because the lessons I've learned, at first I just thought, oh, bollocks to life. You know, what's the point in life? You know, I may as well just end mine now and be with the person that I want to be with. But by the time I'd sort of properly grounded myself, I thought, well, you know, that's just totally ridiculous, because that's not what Rosie would want. Rosie used to say to me that I am one of the voices and faces of hope for the country, and not just here but in the US, who watch what's going on here. And Australia who watch what's going on here with regard veterans, etc. So it's not what she would want. She would want me to pick myself up, brush myself off and say, look, you trained not to fail, so don't feel any self-pity, crack on and get on with it. That's what she would be telling me if she was able. Now, I've also learned that, you know, when Rosie left, she took a part of my soul with me, or with her, and that's okay. It's left me with a bit of emptiness at the moment, which I'll deal with through time. And I know that when I see her again, she'll give that bit of soul back to me. So it's okay to grieve, really. Other lessons I've learned is life is short. So, as Rosie would have said, you've got to live every day as though it's your last, because you never know what's around the corner. Never regret the things that you've done. Just perhaps have a little bit of regret for the things you don't do. If you're in a relationship and the relationship's not working and you know it's never going to work, don't stay in it because you think it's the honourable thing and the loyal thing to do. If there's something better over the horizon and you've got access to it, go for it. Go for it. Don't just stay put and say, oh well, this is it, this is my lot for life, because it ain't. Just go for it. Pastures new. Be with the people that you want to be with, basically. What else? I wrote a couple of things down here. Oh yeah. Always be proud of what you've done. Is one of the things that Rosie used to always say to me. Be proud of what you do. Don't just turn up and be a bit of wall dressing. Rock up and make sure everybody knows that you're there for a purpose and that you own that situation and you're not going to leave until that situation is dealt with. Which sort of puts us back into the realms of what we're trying to do with veterans and Brexit and everything else as well. So I guess that's really about it. Lots of lessons learned, lots of sadness, lots of tears, and I haven't cried like this in years and years and years and years and years. So I'd like to dedicate this video to Romany Rose, who was, despite her injuries and what she'd been through, was a beautiful woman on the outside and an even more beautiful person on the inside. And I thank her for allowing me to be part of her life, even though it was just for a short time. I'd also like to dedicate it to all the true Romany gypsies out there, because you've also allowed me to have an insight into your heritage and your way of life, and you truly are honourable people and you're loyal to those that you care about. So thank you for that also. That's all I got to say, really. That's why I haven't been around much. I'm back now. I've got a new focus. I'm still trying to get my head together, but I'm going to go live on Wednesday, a proper live, because this is a recorded video, because I wasn't sure whether or not I'll be able to complete it or not, without starting again. So I'm going to do a proper live on Wednesday, and that's back into the fray of Northern Ireland veterans, Brexit, and a whole host of other things. It's going to be a long one, so don't be surprised if it's an hour long. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to endeavour to do that on Wednesday. And I've also this week have to nail together a YouTube video which I'm going to send to Sean Morris and John Taylor, which is for their event, which is in Swansea. Wrong, Brecon, on Saturday, the 14th. The first event that I'll be to, bearing in mind that there's another one in York on the 14th also, the first event that I'll be to will be Rolling Thunder in London on the 28th of September. So I hope to see you all there, or as many as possible there. In the meantime, thanks for listening to this video. Bit sad, I know, but I wanted you to know why I've not been around, and hopefully this puts it into sort of direct perspective. The fight goes on. I'm sort of getting myself back into the routine, and I'll see you for that live video on Wednesday. Thanks for listening. Don't suffer in silence. Don't be alone. Remember, I love you all. This call sign is out.